Okay, we're good to go, sir.
Hello, we welcome everyone to our 12 September meeting. Mayor Helsel will probably be joining us soon, but we'll go ahead and get the meeting going. If we would stand, I will lead us in prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Gracious God, we praise you and thank you for our city, our state, and our nation. We ask you to be with us, guide us in our decisions tonight. We ask you to bless our first responders and our military. We ask in your holy name. Amen. Let's face the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first order of business is we are honored tonight to have the Daughters of the American Revolution with us. And if you would meet me at the podium, we will do our proclamation for Flag Day. I'm sorry, Constitution Day. Come on in, come on in. Yeah, get everybody on, get everybody on camera.
You're used to DAR.
I am. Okay, proclamation. Whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees issuance of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17 through 23 of each year as Constitution Week. Now therefore, Gordon C. Helsel, Mayor of the City of Poquoson, do hereby proclaim this week of September 17 through 23, 2022 as Constitution Week. We urge all citizens to study the Constitution and to express gratitude for the privilege of American citizenship in our republic, functioning under the superb body of laws, the Constitution of the United States. And Charlene, I'll present this to you, and signed by the mayor, and you may address the audience if y'all wish.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Poquoson City Council for issuing this proclamation in honor of Constitution Week. The U.S. Constitution continues to be the inspiration for many countries as a model of how democracy should and can work. When James Madison and the other 56 delegates to the Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia in May 1787, they intended to amend the Articles of Confederation. They then ended up creating a new constitution. And Madison, representing Virginia, became the chief recorder of the information during this process. Madison had helped develop Virginia's Constitution 11 years prior to this, and it was his Virginia plan that served as a basis for debate in the development of the U.S. Constitution. Madison argued strongly for a strong central government that would unify the country. The convention delegates met secretly through the summer and finally signed the proposed U.S. Constitution on September 17, 1787. In order for the Constitution to become a law by which all Americans abided, 2/3 of the 13 states had to ratify individually, and it was sent to them for this purpose on September the 28th of the same year. Madison campaigned for the ratification of the Constitution by co-authoring a series of essays with John Jay and Alexander Hamilton that appeared in various New York newspapers and then circulated around the other states. There were 85 essays in all. Mr. Madison wrote 29 of those essays. They became to be known as the Federalist Papers. Before I leave, I would like to quote the inspiring words of another great man. His words, 150 years ago tonight, 38 weary delegates to a convention in Philadelphia signed the Constitution. 4 handwritten sheets of parchment was enough to state the terms on which 13 independent, weak little republics agreed to try to survive together as one strong nation. A third of the delegates had given up and gone home. The moral force of George Washington and Benjamin Franklin had kept the rest together. Those who remained cared the most, and in caring the most, dared the most. The world in 1787 provided a perfect opportunity for the organization of a new form of government thousands of miles removed from influences hostile to it. How we then govern ourselves did not greatly concern Europe, and what occurred in Europe did not immediately affect us. Today, the picture is different. Now, what we do has enormous immediate effect not only among nations of Europe, but also among those of the Americas and the Far East. And what in any part of the world they do as surely and quickly affects us. In such an atmosphere, our generation has watched democracies replace monarchies, which has failed their people, and dictatorships displace democracies, which had failed to function. And of late, we have heard a clear challenge to the democratic ideas of representative government. Speaking for myself, I find this last line to be especially relevant now. This quote was given from a speech by Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, on Constitution Day, September 17, 1937. I would like to invite all of you to come this Saturday in front of Tabernacle United Methodist Church's churchyard bell. We will be ringing bells across America for the DAR, not only America, but through the world. We have DAR daughters all over the world. We will be ringing in honor of Constitution being signed at 4 o'clock. So bring your bell and come on. Again, with deep appreciation from myself and the Charles Parish chapter and our sister chapter, the Home to Grasp chapter of the DAR, I thank you so very much.
Charlene, your chapter is coming up on 50 years. Can you comment on that?
Yes. The Charles Parish chapter will celebrate its 50th anniversary next month on October the 20th, I believe. It's close to 20th, next month. And it's been, I've been in it almost as long as it's been going on. Actually, it started 2 years before I graduated high school. That's saying something.
Thank you. And
Thank you
y'all
so
do
much.
really good work for the nation.
Yes,
and
we do.
for
We
keeping
do.
everybody informed of
Yes.
constitutional issues.
Constitution, on all other factors of anything to do with Americanism. We have scholarships for children, and we do a lot of good.
You do.
A lot of good. We really
Thank
do.
y'all a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Happy to have you. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is a report from the Office of the Voter. If you would come up, please.
Be here or over there?
Whichever you
Either.
prefer.
Okay. Good evening. I was going to say Mr. Mayor, council members, and Mr. City Manager. Thank you for allowing me this time to come and bring you a message from the Electoral Board and the Registrar's Office. I am Bonnie Conry, and I'm currently serving as the Vice Chairman of the Electoral Board. So, do you want to make sure we do that? Okay. I do too. As you may be well aware, we are having an election here on Tuesday, November the 8th. Please mark that day on your calendar. And when you go to vote at your precinct, you will notice signatures on his petition to run for council from that precinct, and only the residents who are registered voters in that precinct will vote for that council member. So if you are representing Western Precinct, only the voters in Western Precinct will vote for you. What this does for Poquoson is gives us 3 ballot styles that will be used for this election. You'll have to have specific ballot to the specific precinct that you're voting in. But the good news in all of this is that our mayor, our Commonwealth attorney, our city treasurer, our commissioner of revenue, and the sheriff will still be voted at large in the city of Poquoson. So they'll represent all of us, and we'll vote for all of us will vote for them. I'd like to also remind the council and the citizens that we offer curbside voting. When you pull up to your precinct to vote, you'll notice the parking space closest to the entrance will have a sign on it that says curbside voting with a phone number on it. We request that you call this phone number, in which turn a election official will bring you, come and get your ID, take it in to check you in at the polling place, bring you a ballot under privacy cover, allow you to vote, take that ballot back under the privacy cover, and take it in and put it through the scanner to cast a vote, just as if you were in there. This is offered to those of us who are 65 or older, or have a permanent or a temporary disability. So encourage our older citizens to use this instead of coming in and going through the crowds to vote. Just in case you happen to have something to do on November the 8th, or you choose not to stand in the long lines to vote because we do have good voter turnout, we are offering early voting. Early voting precinct will be set up here in the council chambers in City Hall starting September 23rd. You'll be able to vote Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4:30, and on the 2 Saturdays previous to the election, you'll be able to vote 9 to 5. When you come in to register, to check into your poll book to get your ballot, the election official working the poll book will make sure that you get the ballot that represents the precinct you're in. Remember I said earlier, there's going to be 3 style ballots for the posting. So double check and make sure that you have the right precinct when you vote. To vote is a privilege and a right. Please don't waste that privilege and that right. Please vote, whether you vote early voting or whether you vote at your precinct on election day. Please vote. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Condrey?
You didn't even hear what I said?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that report. Now, we have a little bit of change to our agenda. Our delegate, A.C. Cardoza, is with us today, and he's going to come up and say a word or two.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to come and address the City Council and let them know an update about our special session that's just ended in Richmond. We selected several judges and placed them. Actually, I will be this week. I'll go into several of the actual emplacements of those judges. We weren't able to fill all of those judges. The ones in positions that were left open will be filled in the interim by our governor, Governor Youngkin. I think we had a good session. We had 2 good sessions, and I look forward to passing more legislation for the city of Poquoson, for its people, and to promote our values. And if there's any questions anyone has, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to say my number and my email, and if anyone in the city of Poquoson has any issues, anything I can help with, please feel free to reach out to my office. Also, you can come visit my actual office, which is open most business days and some Saturdays. So our number is 757-751-0929. Our email is delacvirginia@house.virginia.gov, and our address is 102 Pratt Street, Fort Monroe, Virginia. So please come by, call, or email, send a letter, anything. We will reach out to you. We will fix your problem to the best of our ability. And I think that's about it.
Any questions for our delegate from anyone? Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is an audience for visitors. If anyone would like to address council about any subject, please step up to the podium and do so. I don't see anyone, so we'll close that item and go to approval of minutes.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of our regular session of August the 8th, 2022.
Okay, had a motion and a second. Ms. Kim,
Vice Mayor Freeman,
I vote first. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews. Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilman Fye,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. Our next item is a public hearing for the issuance of up to $4 million City of Poquoson general obligation bond for certain capital improvements presented by the Davenport Company.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Kyle, you want to come ahead and go forward? Remind council members at the conclusion of the public hearing, there is an ordinance for your consideration that would actually be the authorizing action for the matter that is the subject of the public hearing.
Very good. Well, Vice Mayor and members of council, nice to see you all.
You got that.
Sorry, they go to sleep. Well, I'll try to put him else to sleep.
Yeah.
There you go. That sounded live. Very good. So we'll start over. Good evening. Vice Mayor, members of council, good to see you all. As always, again, Kyle Laux with Davenport, and you may remember Dan Siegel to my right with Sands Anderson, also here this evening. So what we have, and it may be coming up on the screen, and I have hard copies of this to the extent it is, everybody's got that already?
Yeah, everyone's got it.
And again, this is really a continuation of what we talked about in very early August with respect to the public safety station, and there we go up on the screen there. The public safety station, and proactively thinking about going ahead and getting financing for that to complement the dollars that we've got in terms of ARPA funds from the federal government to get that project kind of up and rolling. And so since we talked in August, we've gone through a competitive bidding process, as we've done many times in the past. We have those competitive bids back. We'll share those with you this evening. And we think we've got a very nice result. We'll give you a little more color on that. And then obviously at the end of that, have the public hearing and allow you, to the extent your comfort, go ahead and vote on that. So again, with a little bit of background, we'll try and get the screen in about the right place here. But what we're really talking about is $4 million of a expected roughly about $13 million project. Mr. Mayor, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Great. And so again, what you're able to do here as a city is take some of these federal dollars, these ARPA dollars, and put them to maximum use and use those toward the project that is, as you know, not us telling you, will be a very valuable asset to the city. And so if I've got this thing about right, we'll get there. Again, so we're borrowing about $4 million, but importantly, we're only borrowing $4 million for a project that'll be roughly $13 million. The rest of it does not need to be borrowed. And so that ability to kind of balance out some of the borrowing at favorable interest rates, clearly with using a lot of the federal dollars to get an important project done. We note here interest rates. You probably see this a lot in the news. We talked about this in August. While they certainly are higher than they were in 20 and 21, they're at very favorable levels. We've got specific results to show you there in terms of that. And so to that end, we'll go to the next page, which just again shows you a graph of, historically speaking, on the left-hand side, this is what we call the 20 bond index. This is kind of a broad-based index, maybe a little bit kind of like watching the global kind of stock market, but this is for municipal bonds. So the left-hand graph is looking all the way back to 1980. And what you really see there is, historically speaking, over that 40-year time period, rates are still very favorable. We had that little blip there. We'll see if the laser pointer works. This, in terms of the pandemic era, sort of induced all-time lows, which you're able to take advantage of a couple times. They've come back up from there, but again, very favorable from a historical perspective, and we'll give you some more specifics. So our goals here, probably most important at the top of the page, we talk about budget impact, and that's the ability to do this financing without any impact to your tax rate. And so you may recall, going back really several years at this point, with this council, prior councils, with the manager, putting in place that long-term financial plan that really started with the middle school project and kind of took some other projects into consideration. And so what we're really able to do by virtue of that good stewardship over the years is get this project done, this roughly $4 million, without any impact to the budget, without any impact to the tax rate is really what I mean by that. So this is all already proactively incorporated within your budget for 2023 and going forward. Certainly want to take advantage of the lowest rates we can. We'll get to that. A fixed interest rate, we note that at the bottom there. It's what we'll be doing, similar to many other city financings that we've done. We're financing a long-term project, and so we're going to pay for that over a basically 20-year time period. This is a facility that will last multiple generations, and so the term of repayment really kind of coincides with that. And lastly, prepayment flexibility. So 20-year time periods, you know, in some sense seems like it's maybe relatively short, but it'll take a while. And so we'd like to make sure we've got that flexibility to either refinance, to pay it down, to do some things in the future, so you as a city have that flexibility. So as we move on, what bids did we actually get from the banking institutions? So 6 bids, or 6 banks submitted a bid, and you see those listed at the top of the page. It's a very good number of banks. Rates are rising, market's been pretty volatile this year, and so it's been probably a little more uncertain than in past years in terms of what banks are going to be willing to do. And so the fact that you as a city, even before we get to the interest rate, we're able to have 6 different banks that were very much interested in putting in competitive bids says a lot about the city's finances and their comfort level with what you look like financially. It also points back to those credit ratings, that even though this particular financing doesn't need to be rated, all of these banks can see and know that we have AAA credit rating from S&P along with the AA's, and so that all becomes very, very valuable when the banks are looking at, A, do we want to make a loan, and B, at what interest rate, and those ratings allow them to have the comfort to do that at the lowest interest rate the market will allow. So you see the bids at the top of the page there. Truist Bank, we highlighted in green on purpose. That's the kind of combination of SunTrust and BB&T. Webster Bank, Pinnacle, Huntington, Capital One, and CNF. And I think the interesting thing you see here is it's a combination of national banks that operate nationally. Not all those are going to be household names. So, for instance, like a Webster Bank is really New York-based, does some things across the country. They see and recognize that Poquoson is a very good credit. Again, the credit ratings, and we're comfortable putting a bid in. And then again, down to the CNF, more local bank, and kind of across that entire spectrum, a number of institutions, 6 in this case, put a bid in. Maybe cutting straight to the chase here, table in the middle of the page. Truist Bank is our recommendation to you this evening. They provided the lowest interest rate of any of those banks, so that rate is a 3.53. That is fixed for full 20 years. So if the council were to move forward tonight, we would know what that rate is. We'd move forward and lock that in. It very simply stated is lower than any of the rest of them. The rest of them very competitive. Webster to 368, Pinnacle to 389, so forth, so on. So you can kind of see the relative pricing there, but simply stated, Truist is the most cost-effective of any of those. Another factor of the Truist bid, we'll try and get on the page here, is the prepayment flexibility. So again, we mentioned that we want to make sure we have the ability over that full 20-year time period if we want to refinance for some reason, if we need to pay some off, if we want to maybe restructure in the future, we have that flexibility. What they've said is there's a 1% penalty if we do that during the first 10 years, and then after that 10-year time period, there's no penalty to doing that as we kind of work out some of those details. So we've got a lot of flexibility. We have a known rate. That interest rate is fairly substantially below what we use for planning purposes. So as your budget was set up, it used a more conservative number. So all coming in better, meaning a lower payment than what was budgeted. We'll just show you a little graphic representation here. This is the city's tax-supported debt profile, meaning not in the sewer fund per se, but everything else. You look at that visually. The dark green is our existing before we do this $4 million. The light green is the payments on the $4 million. And so what you see is even with this $4 million added, the city will have a nice decline in our debt service coming up in that 2029 time period. And so you think, is there future capacity? To the extent there's future needs, there will always be future needs. There is some capacity coming up in that 2029 time period to incorporate whatever the next round of needed improvements may be. Maybe kind of wrapping up here in terms of our recommendation and rationale, we are recommending that you move forward with Truist for those reasons we stated. It's the lowest interest rate. It's a fixed interest rate for a full time period, and the prepayment flexibility that we've talked about also obviously fits within the budget and does not require that we raise revenues to kind of get that done. Our next steps here, try and get it on the page here. We're obviously here this evening, and so after this, happy to answer any questions as always, and then have a public hearing. And then there is an ordinance that Dan Siegel, I think, could fill you in on any of the details of, et cetera. But that really are the only steps required of council. And with that action, we can work with your staff, with the bank, to have these funds in hand basically by the end of the month and ready to go for the project. And that's what you see on the rest of the page there. So with that, Mr. Mayor, trying to be succinct there because I think hopefully we have good news, but we'll answer any and all questions that you have, as always.
Okay, any questions?
I had one. The 1%, is that based on how much is remaining at that point?
Correct. That's right. That's right. So as that principal gets paid down, that 1% gets smaller and smaller.
Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Before we open the public hearing, I apologize to council and to those of you in the audience and to those who are watching, but I had a personal pressing issue I didn't realize was going to come up tonight, and it did about 6:30. So I've been trying to deal with that, but anyway, I apologize. Okay, let's open a public hearing then and ask if there's anyone in our audience like to address the general obligation bond proposal. See any, so we'll close the public hearing. We do have an ordinance attached.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance of up to $4 million principal amount of a general obligation bond of the city of Poquoson, Virginia, and providing for the form, details, and payment thereof.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and second that we adopt the ordinance. Any concerns, comments, questions? If not, Ms. Kim, please.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you, Kim. So we're going to move on to new business? Okay, first item is an ordinance authorizing city manager to enter into a contract with HBA Architecture, Interior Design, Agricultural, and Engineering Services, Public Safety Building Design. Randy?
I'll just defer to Tanya. She's been leading the procurement team on this.
Oh, I didn't see you standing there, Connie.
Not a problem.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to keep things moving. Well, council, thank you for having me, and thank you for approving that ordinance for the bond. That completes the funding that we need to move forward with the public safety building. So based on this, we've done an RFP requesting A&E service for firms to do and design the building. We got 3 firms in that submitted proposals. We interviewed all 3 and came to the conclusion that we'd like to enter into contract with HB&A Interior and Design. They will actually design the public safety building and assist us with the construction of the building as we move forward. Due to the fact that the dollar amount is over $100,000, we do need City Council's approval to award the contract. The total contract price right now is $982,574. A little bit, a little bit high, but definitely well spent once we get this going. So I have any questions, I'm here.
Any questions of Tanya? Righty, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So you have the ordinance attached authorizing the city manager to enter in contract and award HB&A.
Ask for a motion right now.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with HBA Architecture and Interior Design for architectural and engineering services for the public safety building design.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and second that we adopt the ordinance. Any more questions, concerns, or comments? Ms. Kim, please.
Councilwoman Andrews. Aye. Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thanks, Kim. Are you next? You on this one,
She
too?
is.
Okay. Okay, it's an ordinance making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2023 for the Special Revenue Grant Fund.
Council, again, thank you. In our FY23 budget, we appropriated the ARPA funds to various projects. 2 of those projects, we have received the updated quotes, and they've gone a little bit over the appropriations, so I've come before you with an ordinance moving funds for our administrative appropriation. That was the group to help us get to this point and understand how we can spend the ARPA funds. So we're taking appropriation from them, which is not needed, and moving it to 2 projects. The first project is the fiber ring. That's the fiber that's going to go into the ground that connects all our city buildings together and provides, efficient service. Right now, our fire stations are on a different telephone system than currently the city hall. So we need additional $15,000 to complete that project. In turn, we're doing Wi-Fi extension to take it all the way down to Messick. We need an additional $25,000 to complete that project. With this dollar amount, we are asking that you approve the city manager to enter into contract with Shore Communication. They're on a contract that allows us to ride it. So therefore, because of the dollar amount again, we do need your authorization to move forward both on getting appropriation for the projects and allowing the city manager to sign the contract.
You do such a nice job.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions of Tanya? Okay, we do have an ordinance.
Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2023 in the Special Revenue Grant Fund as outlined by Tanya.
All right, thank you, buddy.
Second.
All right, a motion made and second, we adopt the ordinance. Any concerns, comments, questions regarding the ordinance? If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews. Aye. Councilman Green.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thank you, Kim. Next item on our agenda, item 3, an ordinance appropriating funds to support the expansion of the Police Department School Resource Officer Program.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. You'll recall in June of this year, council considered and approved the addition of the 3rd in a series of SROs, 2 previously approved by council a couple of years, 2-3 years prior. And at that time, we got your authorization to seek grant funding through the state to add the 4th position so that when all 4 positions were online each of our 4 public schools would have its own SRO. We were hoping at that time that the state would offer an earlier opportunity to apply for their grant round. It is typically first quarter of the calendar year, and the state did exactly that. They opened it up in July. Our police department made application, which was accepted. And so our goal was to have the 4th SRO no later than the beginning of the next upcoming school system. This action, should you approve it, will actually allow us to do that considerably sooner. The amount of state money to support the salaries and related expenses is $96,000 for the current fiscal year. We do have an opportunity to reapply for a number of years, as we did with the first 2, and we were successful each time with the application for continuation funding. There is also an appropriation requested for $75,000 of local money from the general fund balance, the purpose of which is to provide the equipment, including but not limited to vehicle, personal gear, gun belts, vests, uniforms, the things that are not covered by the grant, but things that certainly required for the SRO position. The last thing I'll say, and I'll be glad to answer any question, is we hope to have the 4th SRO position operational, assuming your approval tonight, by Thanksgiving. And the 3rd one is already operational, right on schedule. Glad to answer any questions. I would note to you, Captain Waddell's here for the next item, but if you have a police-specific question, he would be, I'm sure, the best person to answer it as well.
Any questions of the manager? All right, pal. All right. One thing before we vote, if you haven't been to the middle school or and you haven't had a tour yet, you need to go look at the safety issues they've overcome there. It's amazing. It's amazing. Not only that, but Officer Gills is that resource officer there. She'll be able to just view the property, the class. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Okay, we have an ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept 2023 free grant for the 4th school resource officer and make additional appropriations to the general fund as corrected.
Second.
Okay, I've heard a second. Motion made and seconded. We adopt that ordinance. Any concerns, comments? Any other questions? If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Hux?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman? Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Next item on the agenda, item 4, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept the Burn Justice Assistance Grant, making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2023 general fund. Andy?
I'd like to recognize Captain Waddell.
Oh,
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Captain, welcome.
Members of Council, thank you. The Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program makes federal funds available to localities to help support their efforts to reduce crime and improve public safety. The Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services was designated to administer a portion of the JAG funds for the state. In August of this year, we were notified by the Department of Criminal Justice Services of an award of $2,758 from fiscal year 2021 funds. In our continued efforts to improve our service to the community and preventing and reducing crime, the Poquoson Police Department will use these funds for overtime patrols in targeted areas at times of increased activity. And I can answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? When you go back to the police department, if you go back tonight, thank them for the ride over here.
Yes, sir.
It was swift. And I didn't enjoy riding in the back seat, but unfortunately that's why I had them. Thank them for me, please.
Did they handcuff you?
No,
Oh,
you can't get out of that back seat though, I'll tell you that.
A picture of that?
Okay, no questions, let's do this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept the Burn Justice Assistance Grant and making additional appropriations for fiscal year 2023 to the general fund.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded, we adopt the ordinance. Any concerns, comments, any other questions of the captain? Not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Southall? Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks? Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Andrews?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item 5, an ordinance making additional appropriation for the Chesapeake Bay Implementation Grant for fiscal year 2023 in the general fund.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, just would defer opening comments to Laura News, who's done the work for us on this.
Okay, Laura?
So, good evening, Mayor, and good evening, council members, and good evening, City Manager. So before I start talking about the grant tonight, most of you have never met me, so I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. So I'm Laura Noose. I am your Environmental Compliance Officer. I was brought here in March of this year. I have over 15 years of public service in localities here in Hampton Roads. In May, I completed my master's in environmental studies here at CNU. Previously, I was in Newport News. Before they brought me over, I was the environmental specialist, and before that, I was the GIS specialist for Public Works. I am honored to serve the locality in which I live and have grown to love here in Poquoson. The ordinance before you today is a grant that Poquoson has been awarded by the Department of Environmental Quality, also known as DEQ.
Wally, could you close the door, please?
Thank you. It's under the Chesapeake Bay Implementation Grant, also known as CBIG, and is valued over $26,000. And over the next year, our contractor, Stantec, will do 3 things for the city of Poquoson. The first thing it'll do is update our ordinance. It will review our ordinance pertaining to anything under the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act and ensure that they comply with the updated state regulations. They will also create and implement a web page for environmental services under the same Chesapeake Bay guidelines to house any pertinent in Chesapeake Bay material and information for our citizens, residents, and contractors. This includes maps, educational components, ordinance excerpts, with the plan to expand to other environmental needs for our Poquoson citizens once this grant has been completed. The third task is to update our map layers pertaining to the Chesapeake Bay features within our city. This includes our 50-foot seaward and landward our resource protection areas, as well as the resource management areas, IDA, and incorporate them into our city's current interactive map. Obviously, I don't have to tell you how much this will benefit our city staff, our residents, and our contractors greatly. And so if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions of Laura? If you haven't met her, she's doing a great job. Glad to have you. Thank you for introducing yourself. Okay, we've got an ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriations for the Chesapeake Bay Implementation Grant for fiscal year 2023 in the general fund as outlined by law.
All right, thanks, sir.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. We adopt the ordinance. Any concerns, comments, any more questions for Laura? All right, Ms. Kim?
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel? Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 6, a resolution accepting streets and improvements, Drake's Landing subdivision into the city's transportation system. Mr. Horton,
Good evening.
good evening.
We haven't done one of these in a while. It's been since 2018 since we did one. But this is a resolution accepting streets and improvements in the Drake's Landing subdivision into the city's transportation system. I'm happy to report to you that all the improvements in Drake Landing have been installed, have been checked, have been verified, and that the required amount of default bond has been posted. And of course, this will be good for 2 years, this default bond. So any additional questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions of Wally?
I was going to say, I was confused by this because actually I've never been through it before. But I called your office and talked to Sherry. She straightened me out. And just want to say that every time I call your office, I'll get straightened out. But I get educated, so I appreciate all the people in your office that work for you.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and we're happy to do it.
Any other questions? Okay. Ready? Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution accepting certain streets and subdivision improvements in the Drake's Landing subdivision into the City of Poquoson transportation system.
All right.
Second.
Motion made second that we adopt the resolution. Any concerns, comments? Any other questions of Wally? If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilman Southall. Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Comments, City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a few things this evening. I want to start by expressing appreciation to everyone that worked in the selection committee process for the Public Safety Building A&E contract, and I want to thank you for your approval and authorization earlier today, which of course couldn't have happened had you not also approved the bond issuance of the $4 million to go with the $9 million approximately we've already appropriated for ARPA. So we're making a huge next step in that project, and I thank you for that. I also thank you for your support for the SRO program. I'm thrilled that we're getting the fourth one in place more than half a year ahead of our back-end schedule. We hoped for sooner, but we were planning for later, sooner rather than later. And then lastly, just in response to a couple of questions that were asked last week as part of the ribbon cutting at the new barbecue restaurant at Messick Point, and the questions pertain specifically to the Messick Point repaving project, and within that specifically to the line painting element of that. Anyone that's been down there will notice if you're heading towards Bill Forest, there's a sizable area on the left-hand side that doesn't have a line on it. The reason for that temporarily is because when they were painting the lines, when we were having all those high tide events recently, so they had to skip the areas that were either underwater or very wet. And that is also true for further up Messick when you get to the point itself. So in the coming weeks, they will paint the white line in the gap. They'll also continue the white line, center line, to approximately the yacht club. So it looks like it hasn't finished yet. That's true, it isn't. But tide prevented it from getting done that week. And also just a general reminder that I'm not exactly sure the date, but in the coming weeks, we will be working to repave the small parking lot at the Messick Point boat ramp, the one next to the boat ramp, and there'll be plenty of public advance notice of what we're doing and when we're doing it. But those are things to look forward to at Messick in the coming month or two.
All right.
That's all I got, sir.
Okay, David?
Thank you, Gordon. I have no comment
Okay,
tonight.
Bud?
No comments.
Keith?
Along with the paving, they paved our neighborhood, and I just thank them for that. They came by today with a street sweeper to clean up the last little bit of debris. And I tried to caution my neighbors that something my dad used to say is, don't tell a person how they did until you tell you done. And they weren't done. So it's done, and it's really good now. I appreciate their work.
Good. Bud?
Yeah, I'd like to, again, thank everyone here and at home for paying attention to their city government. That's an important thing for everyone to do, and then ask your neighbors to do the same thing. I'd like to also thank Captain Waddell for being here and working with the city, doing a fine job. Randy and his staff for doing an excellent job, makes our job really easy. And I'd like to thank Representative A.C. Cordoza for coming and visiting our city. It's the second time he's done that since I've been on this council, and we enjoyed having him come.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I always like going after Bud because he covers everything, so I don't have to. But I just want to say I'm really excited for the new police building. I know that's something that our officers have wanted for a very long time. I just wanted to thank Randy and his staff because that was a lot of coordination, getting a piece of land, going through all the steps to get the funding, taking advantage of the government money that we have to make that happen. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who did that. Much needed, and I can't wait to see it.
I have nothing further.
Well, nor do I. We do have a closed session. And it is a closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia 1950, as amended for consultation with counsel regarding a legal matter requiring legal advice.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made second, we go to closed session. Ms. Kemp?
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Hux. Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thanks, Kemp.
Half-step.
Okay.
Good to go, sir.
All right, we are returned from our closed session. We need to certify that, please. Mr. Green?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we certify our closed session and that we talk about only what we convened the closed session to talk about.
All right.
Second.
All right, motion made, second, that we went into closed session and talked about only what we said we were going to then talk about. Ms. Kim?
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Mayor Hissel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7 to 0.
All right, thanks, Kim. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion made, second, we adjourn. Ms. Kim?
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Southall. Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Green. Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7 to 0.
Thank you, ma'am. We are adjourned.